or candidate forum with specific candidates that we wanted to get to know better. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce my our Vice President, Chris Greer. She's going to be our MC for tonight.
So this will be for all four of you, actually. What do you plan to do to combat the drug problem in Lake County?
There's no doubt that there is a drug problem in Lake County. The drug of choice, I think, has changed since my generation, where we used to worry about marijuana and beer, and now it's meth and heroin and prescription pills. All of you have read numerous articles about more jail beds and how we need to build a larger detention facility. I believe that any detention facility that we might consider, whether building something new or adding on to what we have, has to have a treatment component to it. And I also believe that this cannot be funded solely by Lake County property taxpayers. That any kind of a treatment center facility that we put together has to be a cooperative effort between the federal government, state government, CSKT, and also Lake County. So we do need something, but we also have to figure out a way to fund it other than strictly property taxes. Thank you.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the drug problem here in Lake County, I just want to give you a little bit of background on how I learned about the extent of the drug problem here in Lake County. What I did in deciding to run for sheriff is I sat down and met with all the police chiefs. And the first question I asked all the police chiefs, as well as the commissioners, was, what's your number one public safety problem? And of course, they all universally stated it was the drugs. It was pretty obvious that there was a drug problem here. Since I do most of my shopping at Walmart, I'm walking up and down the aisles, and driving around through Polson, you can see the number of people that are using the effects of the substance abuse. What I see as being probably one of the biggest solutions to the drug problem in Lake County is actually how are we going to provide a meaningful deterrent to the crime. From my perspective, from a law enforcement's perspective, it starts by deterrence. Treatment is good, but my officers should be armed social workers. They actually need to be out there enforcing laws and holding people accountable that are breaking the laws. As far as treatment goes, I believe it only is effective when you get sobriety. Sobriety starts when you have incarceration. I'm all for drug treatment. I'm all for drug diversion type programs if it provides me jail space, because I need that jail space to get sobriety. I also need that jail space to provide a deterrence to those people that are out there dealing in the drugs. One of the unfortunate circumstances that we're faced is part of the 20 years of a crisis that our criminal justice system is currently in is because we don't have a way to deter criminal behavior. It becomes progressively worse. And so in other words, people are actually dealing drugs is considered a non-violent felony that doesn't result in any kind of jail time. That is a tragedy. That is a crisis. That's a crisis to a community where you suffer all of the residential burglaries, all the vehicle burglaries, all these spin-off crimes that are related to substance abuse. Treatment is good. Treatment has a place. I would differ in some areas as between the people that are running the treatment program's definition of success versus the people that are paying to fund the treatment program's definitions of success. And what I mean by that is I view a successful drug treatment program. People are sober when they're done with the program, they got a job, and they're supporting their families. Unfortunately, what happens, the more people that come into the program, to keep the programs going and to get the stats needed to continue the funding, that definition is watered down. And it goes from actually a person that is using for the first time that says that they need help to individuals that are actually dealing. My approach, and I'm sorry if I went too long, is just a tough love approach. Provide the treatment to the people that want it, the people that are recognizing they have the need for it. Those who don't, we have to hold them accountable. Thank you.
All right. So at the level of federal level, as your next United States Senator, there's a number of things we need to do. Number one, we do have to do something about prevention. And what we know is that if we make it expensive enough, that or too expensive to start into drugs, that young people won't get into drugs. So first thing we have to do is we have to build a wall. We have to close off our borders, and we need to be able to make sure that the price of drugs coming out of Mexico, which is the high-grade methamphetamine that we're seeing and the heroin, we got to shut off that trafficking so that the price goes way up, so that what happens in that situation, it becomes a barrier for people getting into this situation. Number two, we need to be able to increase the resources for our law enforcement. We've heard what's going on here. You can't be armed social workers. And what we have to do in that situation especially is making sure that the people that are going after the gangs and going after the drug trade, especially at the federal level, the FBI, we got to make sure they have the right workforce, and we have to make sure that they have the resources. And really what we have to do is we have to shake the bureaucracy tree. A lot of that money that goes into these bureaucracies gets stuck in the bureaucracy, and we need to shake it and get that money down to the level where it's working for us. Okay? And then number three, on the health side, I agree. What we need to do is we have to look at how we're going to work on these treatment programs, because they're lousy. And I don't mean that the treatment programs are lousy, but the success rate is lousy. Anything that we look at in medicine to say after one set of treatment, it's not like an infection that we give somebody 10 days of antibiotics and that's pretty much gone, right? No, what we do is we put it in a huge program, and we find that their success rate of taking them out and keeping them sober is low. I mean, can you say 50% or less? So one of the things that we can do, and I'm interested in, and hopefully we're going to see with Trump's plan for fighting the opioid, this epidemic is Suboxone. It is the 21st century methadone. It is a medicine that cuts off cravings. The problem is for us to get that, physicians to prescribe it, it's been highly regulated and highly limited, and therefore it's not effective. And we have to find a way to bring that back out in the situation, use it in treatment, so that it can be the belt and suspenders. We need to cut that craving so that we can take care of that issue so that people are more likely to stay sober. So these are just many of the areas, but I will fight for you at the level, the federal level, or at the federal side, to help these gentlemen do their job.
Yay. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Bill Reed, and in 2012 I served in the legislature, and my old House district, which was half the Blackfeet Indian Reservation, and if you look at a map, it's actually the poor side of the Flathead Indian Reservation where all the tribal housing is. Now I don't mean poor racially, I mean that's the way it was designed as an Indian-only House district. I won that in 2011, and one of the issues that was going on, and this is what we're talking about, is the drug issue that happens to have a basis of income. If you earn your income and you have to work for your income, you are less tendency to be on those drug issues. One thing I found out about the Blackfeet Indian Reservation and somewhat on the Flathead Indian Reservation is there is so much potential for people to, quote, not have a decent job that my opinion is for the salvation of this reservation is, and the whole state, provide decent jobs. Now the support for drug treatment and all of that comes through the House. That's where the money is coming from. I will support those issues, but we also have to have an agreement, and in particular with reservations. Because on reservations, one of the issues that I ran into in my 30 years of being dispatched on fire was finding out that tribal governments, when they deal with, let's say, DUI offenders and stuff, what all the tribal reservations were doing was they were expunging DUI records. So they were basically letting off certain members, and those members did not have to pay for their DUIs. Well, under those circumstances, people have a tendency to skirt the law. They get off. The issue is enforcement. Enforcement means that when you break the law, you have to pay something for it, okay? And on the reservations, there are some people, tribal members in particular, are allowed to skirt the law if they are inside the tribal families and stuff like that. Now, this sounds racist, it sounds like an issue, but in 25 years of working, 30 years of doing fires, that complaint is coming from inside the tribal government. It's coming from the tribal people. They know who is skirting the law. It's not about race, it's about justice. So I will support those issues that support the development of jobs. And I also have one agreement here with Dave Coffman. You gotta keep them away from the public until they are clean. That is the only way they can get that first step to get off those drugs.
So the next question kind of adds on to that. We've increased the Medicaid enrollment in Montana, and we've cut Medicaid reimbursement. So we're kind of having a healthcare crisis, and as we know, the drug problem, most insurance companies don't pay for drug treatment. So how do you propose that we pay for the drug treatment?
Well, I definitely don't have the solution for that. And when you talk about a Medicaid crisis, let me tell you something that's happening with me, my own personal experience. I was under health care, I was paying my share of health care, and one day I get a letter that says, your income is so low that you qualify for Medicaid. You have 30 days to drop your insurance and you are going to be forced on Medicaid because your income does not allow you to receive anything but Medicaid. So I had to actually drop my insurance policy. I had to do it in 30 days or it had been violating the federal law. And so here I am, I've recovered from 2 hip replacements and other things, and I'm back to work again, but I am forced to stay on Medicaid because I just don't have that total income. That issue about they will not pay for drug rehabilitation, that's a federal issue because the federal government is where the background of that comes from. The state, which is expanding its Medicaid programs, and the lack of payment to the doctors is causing all sorts of issues, which I don't have a solution for because, for one, I'm not a fan of Medicaid, but I'm on it. So I don't have a good answer of how we cover the doctors. But back even in 2012, when I was in the legislature, there were bills in there to create fair pay to doctors for their efforts. Because even back in 2012, the federal programs were limiting what the doctors were getting. I don't have a solution for the drug issue and Medicaid because it's creating its own bottleneck.
Well, as a doctor, yes, we just need to fix it, right? The fact is that at this time, in the state of Montana, 1 out of 4 people are now on Medicaid. 1 out of 4. When I first started as a physician in 1998 in Kalispell, after I came out of the United States Air Force, it was 1 out of 25. 1 out of 25, now it's 1 out of 4. And this is from Obamacare. They are forcing us into a single-payer system, and this has been their goal. And right now, we're in a position where we're ready to push back. The thing is it is true. The only way that we're going to be able, or one of the ways that they're justifying Medicaid expansion is figuring out how that we can use it as a vehicle to pay for drug treatment programs. And that's one of the ways that they're holding in the ground and trying to keep us to make Medicaid expansion permanent. What we need to do is we're going to have to take drug treatment, we're going to have to move it over on a different program. And I do believe what we're going to see very soon because Melania Trump pointed out that the opioid addiction and the epidemic is a major issue and she's going to push for it. She talked about that today, May 7th. And today was Be Best Day, a proclamation to work on for the children, especially opioid addiction, and to stop this epidemic, and work on also cyberbullying. So I'm encouraged, and I hope to see that they're going to come out of this. And I think drug treatment's going to have to be pulled aside. We're going to have to create a separate program on this and figure out what we're going to do with it, and then use it, make sure it's transparent so we all know where we're going with it, and work with to create good drug treatment programs, not only in New York City or in Denver, but we also have to have them here in Montana, not just in Missoula or Billings, but we need to have them in Polson. We need to have them in Havre. We're going to need them out on Fort Belknap. Okay, so we need to work on that. How do we pay for it? One option is we just have to figure out a way to reduce the overhead of the government. And my one plan, and we can use it for this or we can use it to build a wall, is basically we have billions of dollars of unused, empty federal buildings and real estate across the country. And we're still paying operations and maintenance budget to maintain those buildings. And we're talking, it's into the billions of dollars. And we simply need to do what we should have done a long time ago. And that is sell those buildings. If they're no longer needed, if that real estate's no longer needed for the Department of Administration to run the government, then sell it back and put it back into the private market. And take that money and let's invest it into this issue. We can invest it into building a $25 billion wall along the border. But it's a possible situation where we have a pot of money or a bucket of money that then we'll keep giving because we can recoup that maintenance and operation or operations and maintenance budget, which literally is hundreds of millions of dollars a year for those unused and empty buildings.
So when the consensus is we don't actually have enough money to address the problem from a sheriff's perspective, I view my role to be, what are we going to do as a means for deterrence and accountability? So how do we keep those people that are costing all this money through treatment out of the county from a deterrent, from an enforcement side? And I think one of my concerns is what's going on here in Lake County is that it's become essentially a drug sanctuary. Because we don't have the ability to deter or hold people accountable that are actually using the drug. Part of that's the jail side. What I believe that needs to happen is we need to have here in Lake County its own dedicated drug task force. I'm not convinced that our continued participation in the Northwest Drug Task Force, the Northwest Montana Highland Drug Task Force, is where we need to be at right now as a county. What I would propose, and what I see one of the things to do to create the deterrence of people that are coming into the county and those who are continuing to use drugs and feel safe in using drugs and committing the crimes to support those habits, is we need to have a localized drug task force here that's conducting probation searches, serving search warrants on those people and all the drug houses. Everybody here most of the people that I've talked to, when I have to introduce myself, they all have a story about a drug house that's in the neighborhood. The drug house has been there for days, for weeks. They call, nothing happens. I'm concerned that we're not out there aggressively holding people accountable to the existing laws, and I want them to be looking over their shoulders, wanting to know whether or not the cops are coming for them next. There needs to be, and we may not be able to book them because we don't have the jail space, but here's what I can do, and what I will do. I'll take their dope, I'll take their money, and I'll take any nexus that's associated to the crime. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we creating deterrents to people that are out there breaking the laws? I think that's my role as a sheriff. Hold people accountable to actually breaking the laws and creating all the spin-off criminal, drug-related crime that results from that just undermines the overall quality of life here in Lake County.
I think the conversation has strayed just a little bit from what the Medicaid expansion has done to the state and some of the most vulnerable people in the state. Governor Bullock, with his cuts to mental health treatment, some of these other cuts, they have been devastating. And I speak from a little bit of experience. I'm on the board of directors for Western Montana Mental Health and also the Children's Development Center, and we meet monthly. Western Montana Mental Health, we just finished last month trying to figure out how we deal with an $800,000 deficit. The problem is, in my opinion, and from what I've heard from the professionals that I talk to, there is money there to do the treatment. The state and the governor has chosen to decide how mental health and how children's health, especially autism, is going to be treated. And because the way that they have determined that treatment is going to be delivered, it's way more costlier than it needs to be. For example, autism. The Autism Waiver Program previously allowed Children's Development Center to start treating kids with autism at age 3 years old. The governor now cut that budget, and now children cannot receive treatment under the Medicaid program until they're 5 years old. That is a huge problem because we know that early intervention saves thousands and thousands of dollars later. So I believe Montana spends more per capita on mental health costs than any other state in the union. I did not know that until last year. Per capita, Montana spends more on mental health than any other state in the union. So the money is there. The governor needs to figure out what his priorities are, and then he needs to let the professionals, the caregivers, the groups such as Western Montana Mental Health, he needs to let them do their job and determine how to best deliver services to the people that need them and get the government out of their, out of their business. They are the professionals. They need to have the ability to distribute care as needed without the governor trying to tell them how to do it. Thank you.
So this kind of leads into the VA system. We've heard John Tester's commercials about the VA, and yet we have a huge problem with suicides in Montana with veterans and some of the other problems with mental health. There's not trained professionals available. And so let's lead on into that with the mental health aspect and how we're going to take care of our veterans in Montana and what some of the options are from your perspectives to help these people.
You know, I am not a veteran, and so I don't know a lot of the issues that they deal with. I do have brothers and a brother-in-law who are veterans, and I'm around them enough to know a little bit about what their issues are as far as getting health care. One of the solutions that I've looked into, I just really haven't had enough time to really get serious to devote time to it. Ravalli County has an advocate for the veterans, and this person is supported by a very small mill levy. I believe it might be half of a mill. And this person does nothing but advocate for the veterans. And they write for grants, they arrange services for veterans that are very needy. Anyhow, they simply work for the veterans, try to provide services to the veterans, and I think that's something that our taxpayers would vote for here in Lake County. Would be a small amount of money to support an advocate that would deal strictly with the veterans and services to our veterans. We do need to provide the services that they needed, and again, I think the good people of Lake County would support money dedicated to that kind of an office.
So I spent 13 years in the United States Air Force. I was a major in the medical corps, and also I spent time working in the Audie Murphy VA system in San Antonio, Texas. And I'll tell you, there's a couple things we need to do. Number one, we need to change the culture, right? The culture has to be changed. A bureaucracy is not compassionate. The people on the front lines can be, but they get ground down by the bureaucracy and the people they're trying to take care of. The culture of the VA has been one of taking care of themselves and then taking care of the vets second. It just is. Here's my story. While I was working at the Audie Murphy, I was sitting there and I was working just at the same speed I was in the Air Force, all right? Not super fast, but I was working as fast as the organization would let me. And after a week, I got pulled aside and they said, "Doc, you gotta slow down. You gotta quit taking care of all these people so quickly. You know, you're working us to death. I said, wait a minute. I'm not even in second gear. You know, I'm not even, what do you mean I'm working you to death? Doc, we have a one speed that we work at. And either you work at our speed or we're gonna shut you down. Because, why? Because we're gonna be here longer than you will, Doc. You just need to know that, right? That's the culture that has to change. Another story, and I'll just give it to you just because it's real quick. I have a friend who's a rheumatologist that worked in the VA. How hard is it to get into a rheumatologist? It takes months here in the civilian world, years in the VA. And he would work hard, and he would put extra people on. And he's had this happen several times. But one day he came in on the day before a holiday in the summer. And he came in and he had a whole list of people that he had to see. And he was showing up and everybody was putting things away. He said, wait, whoa, whoa. He said, look, we have a whole clinic. Don't put it away. We're going to be busy. He said, Doc, don't worry about it. Just go back to your office. Go home when you want. No, wait. We have a full clinic. Look, there's all these people on the list. And they said, Doc, go back to your office. Don't worry about it. The day's over. And he demanded an answer. And I said, Doctor, every one of these people on this list, they're dead. They're dead. They filled up his entire clinic with people that couldn't come to clinic so they get an extra day off for holiday. Now that is a crime. That is a crime. So what I'm telling you is the culture has to change. Number one, first and foremost, change the culture. Number two, now we have to refocus what the VA is all about. The VA should be the number one authority for wartime and service-related injuries, disabilities, and illnesses. All right? Number one. That means if you have a head injury, if you have post-traumatic stress syndrome, if you're thinking you're suicidal because of what's gone on in the military, you should be able to get the best care in the world in the VA, and we should be recognized for that. If you are a double amputee, a triple amputee, you should have the best therapist and the best prosthetist in the VA. You should say, I only want to go to the VA because it's the best.
Amen.
Right? And that's where we need to be. But in order to do that, when we refocus, that means that if you're getting your cholesterol medications, your high blood pressure medications, or you're a female vet who's been waiting 3 years for her annual GYN exam, you need to get it locally, develop that relationship with a local physician, and you get your bread and butter care here. Because why? Because the VA is definitely not the number one or number two in the world in taking care of your normal health care. Right? Let's refocus them. And then on this issue of on health, or I guess mental health. You know, John Tester built a really nice inpatient unit down at Fort Harrison. It's shiny, never opened. It's closed. That was 3 years ago, 4 years ago they closed it because they didn't staff it. They paid a lot of money to build it, but they didn't staff it. So what I did is, in the house, in 15, we've worked hard, and we have the lake house. Is it the Polson House here?
Yeah.
And we have our local crisis centers. That's what we did with Janet Taylor, and I'm sure you were involved in this too. We made mental health a number one issue for the state, and we're taking care of veterans through those local crisis centers. And you know what? We can get the VA to partner with us in these areas of rural healthcare and frontier healthcare. And that's how we can make sure that we get good healthcare, especially mental health, for our Montana vets. I'm a third generation military vet from Montana. My grandfather was a doughboy. My dad, he fought against the Russians in the territory of Alaska. Wouldn't you love that? And then I finished in the Air Force. I will not let you down on this issue.
So I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I enlisted when I was 17 years old. I have my son. He's currently deployed overseas. He's Army. We had a miscommunication there at some point while he was growing up. But he's a good kid. My point when he was growing up was son serve. You just need to serve. So what role would a local sheriff play in VA affairs? Very quickly and easily, I think it's just giving veterans preference to the hiring. You know, law enforcement is a paramilitary organization. We benefit from that expertise. We benefit as a community from that level of discipline, that maturity, that ability to work together as a team, to recognize what leadership is. I used to mention the department I was working at that there's Marine Corps corporals probably know more about leadership than a lot of the supervisors that were on my department. And it's just because of that experience, that environment where you're exposed to a variety of different leaders. I'm a fan of privatization of VA. I know that doesn't have anything to do with with the sheriff's department, but politically, that would be my stand. Thank you.
From a state legislative position, I remember the term frontier care came about when I was in the legislature. And the issue that always came before us was, where's the money going at the state level? We had a great big battle going on to create a veterans home in Butte. And the veterans home in Butte, which I still think is a big issue in all of the past sessions, the veterans home in Butte was where all the money was, where the opposing party, I'm a Republican, where the opposing party was trying to push all that money. And frontier care was what our cry was back then. So frontier care, local care, and get the state to the point where it teams with the federal government so that local doctors can see veterans. Local doctors can treat veterans. And because we are a frontier state, that is a very legitimate answer for this. We can't afford to send everybody to Helena when there's a perfectly good clinic, but we got to allow state law to open that door, and we got to work with the federal government.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to move on to the water compact. So we know this is all dear to our hearts. So the first question, and I want you all to answer yes, no, and then you can elaborate. So what is your position on the compact?
Definitely unconstitutional parts of it, and it was a all or nothing when it was introduced into the legislature. And if it's unconstitutional in any part, it's unconstitutional all the way through.
The next one, are you willing to speak up publicly with your view on the compact?
I have been, and I have an issue that I try to bring up. When the compact was actually made, it was 246 pages long as a bill. It turned out to be like 7 pages in the Montana Code law. And in the Montana Code law, something appeared that just is a glaring example of the unconstitutionality of it. It's called immunity. Okay, immunity has a definition, and then all of a sudden, for the first time in all of the tribal compacts, the word immune shows up. Immune is a higher authority for immunity. There are 3 classes of people who are immune in the compact: the managers, the engineers, and supervisors. If there are people who are immune and they can run roughshod over our constitutional rights, that's something that has to be brought forward in this next legislative session, because the legislature in the past session made a glaring mistake and did not give it immunity, which our Montana Constitution requires a 2/3 vote. It didn't happen. They changed the rules in the middle of the street, and the rules were unconstitutional, and everybody failed to follow it.
Do you think the tribal government has superiority over the state government?
Tribal government is actually a dependent nation on the federal government, a dependent sovereign government inside the United States. The issue is they have equal standing in the eyes of the federal government, but the state treats the tribe as if it was equal in the state itself. The problem is that when you do that, you are, let's just put it this way. In the state of Montana, do we have 7 nations inside our state, inside the state boundaries? Or do we have these dependent nations where sometimes we need the federal government to come in and give us ruling on what's going on? So I do not treat the state and the tribe as equals because it's an apples and oranges issue.
Same three questions. Want me to reread them?
Please, and I'll go first.
What is your position on the compact?
I don't think I have a position on the compact. I don't know enough about it to actually answer yes or no. I think from a public safety standpoint of view, enforcement of existing laws and keeping the peace is my primary responsibility. And when there are disputes involving water ownership and these legal issues that come up, it's my job to keep the peace and to enforce the laws and take the reports when people are alleging that thefts are occurring.
So we'll skip to the third one. Do you think the tribal government has superiority over the state government?
I don't. I view the tribal government as being, well, let me begin by saying this. I think we all have a shared interest in public safety, whether you're tribal or a incorporated city. Incorporated cities, I view the incorporated cities and tribal governments to be equal in the sense of law enforcement and public safety. As far as the laws go, under Public Law 280, I understand that they have jurisdictional issues with misdemeanors. Right now, with our continued participation in Public Law 280, we have the enforcement with felonies. So I don't see it as being any different than a incorporated city and their interests, their own local interests with law enforcement and having their own chief of police to enforce their laws within that jurisdiction.
So your position on the compact?
Yes. I'm going to two-part this one. When the original compact bill came out, I was in support of it because I thought possibly it was going to save us a lot of money in litigation costs. But I do believe with Mr. Reed that it went through the process that it went through the legislature was unconstitutional. So I don't think that it should have been passed by the legislature. The rest of the story is Senator Tester's draft bill, which is supposedly going to implement the compact. That bill is a disaster. It needs to be opposed by everyone in this room and everyone else in Lake County. It has so much pork in the bill that not even the most liberal Democrat can swallow it. There's about $900 million for rehabilitation of the present Flathead Indian irrigation system. There's another 750 or 800 million in an agricultural development account. Some of that money is going to be put towards rehabilitating tribal fencing on tribal lands. What that has to do with the water compact, I don't know. But there's millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for that. There is a community development account that has about 700 million in it, and part of that money is to build community centers, teaching of the Native American language to children and adults. So there are community water systems in some of our town sites. I have a real problem with that because we have a community water system that was paid for by tax dollars in Elmo, and non-native people cannot hook up to that system. So anytime we put money towards systems that non-native people cannot hook up to, I have a problem with that. We are a country of equals, and we shouldn't be discriminated against whether you are Native American or whether you are non-Native American. We are one community here in Lake County and on this reservation, and we need to act like it and do things that benefit all of our folks, not just one part of the population.
Yes.
Well, first one is easy. I am absolutely vocally and defiantly opposed to the water compact, right? And I really believe that in the United States Senate race, this is the one issue that will make a determination of whether or not John Tester continues as a state senator or as a U.S. senator or not. Because I'll tell you, water rights cross party lines. And I've been all the way from Sanders County, Lincoln County in the northwest of Montana, down to Alzada and Richland County, which is in Sydney. And I'll tell you, regardless of what your party preference is, if you have a property right, you want your water right to go with it. And as they're fighting over in the east, fighting for their water rights and their irrigation rights against the Friends of Wildlife and who are trying to take away their irrigation systems, they are now appreciative of what's going on here in western Montana. And I'll tell you, it's unifying us. And I tell people, united we stand on our water rights, divided we fall. So this is the issue that is very important, and I do believe it's going to be the #1 issue that will determine who our next United States Senator will be.
Yes.
So next question.
Federal government has superiority over state government.
No, they are not a sovereign nation, they are a sovereign entity. And you know what? The state laws are supreme and superior to tribal law. That's easy.
Great, thank you. Great answer.
So this next question comes from Sheila, and I'm going to have her come up here and ask it.
Go, Sheila.
Yes.
Here we go. United States Supreme Court rulings. Does Montana rulings trump that?
Say that again.
Okay, Montana state, their rules, regulations, do they trump the United States Supreme Court rulings and decisions?
So the Supreme Court has the ultimate authority on federal law, right? We do have a supremacy clause, and we have the 10th Amendment, right? So the whole idea of the United States Supreme Court is to determine the constitutionality of laws that are created within the United States, right? And so they are over federal law, and on state law, if there's any issue, it can be brought up if it is appealed from our state Supreme Court. So yes, they do have authority to determine the constitutionality as the last right of appeal. Okay? Oh boy. Oh, so wait a minute, how many parts are there to this question? 5, 6, 7?
Okay, 1981, U.S. Supreme Court ruling, Montana versus the United States. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that tribal government has jurisdiction and control over tribal people and their property. They do not have control over non-tribal people and their property. Okay, going back to the compact, the grand bargain. This has been my bugaboo for years, okay? In the grand bargain, it is said that at the tribe's request, Montana citizens will be removed from the jurisdiction and control of Montana state and placed elsewhere. Okay? Follow me there. Okay, Montana versus U.S. Tribal government cannot control a non-tribal person and their property without their consent. I, for one, never gave consent. I don't think anyone in this room has ever given consent to the tribal government for jurisdiction and control over me and my property. April 2016, U.S. Supreme Court, Menominee Tribe versus the U.S. Again, this ruling, the court decided the contract issues and then went on to decide from this point forward, no statute of the United States or any law will be interpreted except as for what it actually says. Okay. This effectively removes all the old favoritism of interpreting laws as the Indians would have understood them or as interpreted for their benefit. Now, this decision raises the question of whether this rule now applies to all Indian treaties that are officially laws of the United States. Unanimous decision. Because the compact has not been ratified through the U.S. Supreme Court, will this play a part? Will the compact be grandfathered in without this Menominee decision? Because the compact is based on the 1855 treaty, which interprets the treaty as beneficial more so for the tribes as they would understand it. So, where do we stand? Am I making myself clear?
So, to paraphrase, what we have here is we have legal precedent all the way from the United States Supreme Court that basically states the fact that you really can't fudge on the English language, whether it's in a law or in a treaty, right? And what you're talking about is we have this issue of water rights based on the right to fish in common, and many of these issues. As your next United States Senator, and I think this question really is for me only, I don't think this falls in their jurisdiction per se, is that, again, I'm going to fight against this water compact and shut it down for all of these issues. Because once again, you know, we need to make sure that we are not placed in a situation where we create Aboriginal water rights, that we don't create the unitary management organization. We need to make sure that we don't create a conflict in the law that is exactly right here. We, as American people, do not fall under tribal law when we're on our own property and we have our own, you know, our own things.
But the
Right?
grand bargain.
You know, again, a grand bargain, again, I wish that they would spell out the grand bargain, but the fact is we're going to fight this entire compact. As your next United States Senator, we will shut it down.
Amen.
All right? And we're going to, and I want to tell you one thing, and I'll just tell you, when I was last here about a month ago, I asked many people to contact Steve Daines and GM Forte and tell them that you oppose water compact because you're getting a lot of pressure. I want to thank you for doing that because you did. And I got a phone call on Sunday morning from Senator Daines. He said, for crying out loud, Al, will you quit telling them to call me? Will you tell them that I will oppose this bill and this compact as long as I'm senator? He says, I hear you. I hear you, so thank you for doing that. All right? So why don't we go to the next question? I really don't, unless you want them, but I think that was really for me at the federal level. Do you want to take that? All right.
I think I didn't get a chance to answer the last part of that question, whether I thought tribal government had authority or superseded state government. Absolutely not. They are, I'm not sure what they are. They claim to be a sovereign nation, but I'm not sure that that's true. They don't act all the time like a sovereign nation. But as a state, I believe that we have certain rights, even within the confines of the reservation, and we will continue as a board of commissioners to search out ways to combat what we feel are some intrusions on our personal property rights and on our water rights by CSKT. We desire to keep everything transparent. We like things done in the public eye. We know that Senator Tester and the governor regularly travel to Pablo, Montana to try to figure out a way to slip this compact through and get it passed through Congress. But we will continue to keep an eye on these activities, try to keep the public informed and taxpayers informed. There are so many bad parts of Senator Tester's bill that just simply cannot be accepted. You know, there cannot be an easement given through everybody's property to do rehabilitation of the irrigation project and also to bring more acres under the project. Previous tribal chairman, Vernon Finley, testified in Washington, D.C. about a year ago when the compact implementation bill was introduced. And part of his testimony said, if the tribes could rewrite history, we would rather that the project had never been built. And then about 2 minutes later in his testimony, he says, but by the way, we want about $350 million to bring more land under the project, to put more land under the project. So he's arguing we'd rather it wouldn't build, but by the way, since you're handing out all these billions of dollars, we'll take another $350 million and bring more tribal land under the project. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer that.
Thank you, Gale.
Oh, Mr. Decker, this one's for you. Has Governor Bullock or Tester ever visited the Lake County government?
Since I've been commissioner, I've seen Governor Bullock one time. It was at the dedication of the Lake House that Dr. O referred to, the Mental Health Crisis Center in Polson, Montana. Lake County was very instrumental in funding that facility. We applied for several grants through the Jail Diversion Act that went through the Montana legislature. But anyhow, he did show up for that dedication. Senator Tester stuck his head in the office one time, waved hi, and that's all we've seen of it. Now, I will say, Senator Tester's field staff, Chad Campbell especially, they are very open to talking to us. His tribal representative, Sharon Kicking Woman, called us here about a week ago, 10 days, wanted some comments on the compact from the county commissioners. So his field people do reach out to us for comment. Whether or not our comments resonate at all, I have no idea. But Senator Daines' staff is very good to reaching out to us, and we have commented several times to the people that he has on the ground here in Montana, and we certainly appreciate the group of people he has working for him.
What can be done about the voting both in Pablo and Lake County?
Yeah.
The double voting that goes on here.
You know, I guess I don't know how much of a problem that it is. I know that we have an excellent young lady running our elections department, Katie Harding. She's been a great hire for the county. I know she's been preparing for this election for probably 6 or 8 months. She's done training for people to work the election for about 3 weeks now, so she has a crew of very good election judges that are going to be at the polls, and I would hope that there's no double voting, and it's something I can certainly discuss with her and bring it up if it is an issue.
Mr. Coffman, you're next. So we've had this discussion before with other people, gun confiscation. So in Deerfield, Illinois, they are now demanding people turn in their assault weapons and face a daily fine. Also in Boulder, Colorado, they want to actually come into homes and confiscate weapons involuntarily. So since you are the highest elected official in the land, will you stand between me and the feds trying to take my guns?
So yes, I would if they were illegally trying to seize your weapons. I don't see, the problem I have with those issues that you just mentioned with the seizures of the weapons is that law-abiding citizens should be able to own assault weapons. Tax-paying, law-abiding people should be able to own firearms. The last 5 years after retirement, one of my jobs that I had was conducting concealed weapons permit interviews. And it's probably one of the most enjoyable jobs that I had, because you're dealing with people that are actually law-abiding and were interested in actually getting a concealed weapons permit. I'm a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. Some of these issues that are going on with the assault weapons, we just don't need more laws. We don't need to be we need to enforce the laws that are on the books right now. And some of these gun control issues are, they're just, I don't see that they're constitutional. So yes, I would stand between you and the feds.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask the four of you to raise up your hand, because we need to kind of move things along, but this is a backtrack question. Do you support a national voter ID to clean up the election process? So just raise your hand if you support national voter ID. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on. Will you work with the Chief Couture on drug task force?
Yeah, that's one of the solutions that I mentioned earlier. I really think we have a need here in Lake County for a local drug task force, and I would work. Chief Couture comes from a narcotics background, and he has a lot of knowledge, and we have a shared interest in dealing with the drug problems that we do have here in Lake County. And if I could go back to the last question really quick, I think it's really important for us to remember, and I recognize the importance of this, that Montana's in the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals. I really have it's a huge I have a huge responsibility as your sheriff to stay on top of the different types of laws that are coming in. It's just not the gun laws. It's also a lot of your search and seizure, your use of force issues that come out of the 9th Circuit, the panel out of San Francisco. So, not overreacting some of those cases that come out of there. They're the most highly overturned. They're overturned more frequently than any other Court of Appeals by the U.S. Supreme Court. So I just want you to know that I recognize the potential problems that they do create for law enforcement and for the public as it relates to gun ownership and Second Amendment issues.
Okay, this will be for all four of you. So several states have legalized marijuana, and they're using part of that justification for tax revenue. So are you for or against legalizing it in Montana, and how do you feel about using that as a source of tax revenue?
Anytime you legalize something like that for the purpose of generating income, it's a bad idea. I'm for the medicinal use of marijuana. I think it's a bad idea when we as a society introduce an additional form of legalized intoxicant to the community. Bad idea. As far as, for all intents and purposes, because of the way our inability to actually enforce the laws and the recreational use of it, it practically is legalized. And we're heading in that direction. My question for you is if you do support the legalization of and the recreational use of marijuana and other forms of intoxicants, what would your standard be for the officers working for me as it relates to that law? That's the concern that I have. What would that standard be for the teachers of your kids or your grandkids? I hate to see us as a community start going down that path, but we've essentially taken the you shouldn't do that out of substance abuse. It used to be taught, like if I had extra money in my budget to deal with the drug issue, I'm more focused on the prevention. If I had anything, we need to tell kids it's wrong. You don't need to get high. There's other things that you can do. There's other things that you can recreational. We just need to. I know maybe that's a moral statement, but I wish it was more universally believed that just getting high as a form of recreation is something that's socially acceptable. I think the consequences of it. I mean, look what alcohol does. We can't even deal with the misdemeanor alcohol DUI issues that are going on in our community. I just see legalization, recreational use of marijuana is just going to compound the problem. It just makes our roads less safe. It's bad enough as it is.
Good answer.
I'm against the legalization of marijuana, and I'm against using the sin tax to try to create revenues that to provide for our government and for services. And we're going to see with these great experiments in Washington, Oregon, Alaska, and in Colorado, is that the cost of the troubles of marijuana will far outweigh the revenues that they receive in tax revenue. And we're seeing it right now. Just in the number of people who show up in the emergency room having seizures has gone up over 400% because of the potency of the recreational marijuana in Colorado. That is just the tip of the iceberg. So no on legalization, and don't ever buy into the idea that we are going to be able to get enough revenue if we just allow people to enjoy their vices. Because once we go down that slippery slope, it just goes all the way to the bottom.
Yes, great answer.
Back in 2012, I was serving in the legislature at that time. It was the rodeo, the Wild West rodeo of marijuana issues, because the federal government came in and shut down drug producer, marijuana grow operations and that. And I've been following the issues of what's going on in Colorado. The homelessness issue that's just growth potential is unbelievable. The county issues where individual counties are suffering because of the amount of drugs, the highway accidents that are happening. I'm against the medicinal marijuana in any form. I would like to see the new research going on the pill form, the liquid form, get out of the grow operation. Montana in 2011 was considered an exporting nation, not a state, an exporting nation for the amount of marijuana that was leaving the state for other states, because our medical grow operations cannot be controlled under any way, circumstance. It's just not viable for this state to practice that.
I am opposed to the legalization of marijuana. I believe it's a gateway drug, that it leads to other drugs that will do a lot more harm to your body than what marijuana will do. I also, as an educator and a coach for 30-some years, I saw firsthand what marijuana does to young people. And you could have a high school athlete, maybe freshman, sophomore year, outstanding student, good athlete, and then come back the next year and maybe not even come out for the sport. And so you go to some of his friends and say, why isn't Bill trying out for the basketball team? And they'll say, well, he fell in with some bad company and he's down on the corner smoking marijuana most of the time now while we're practicing. He has no more interest in sports or in academics. So I believe that it would be a serious mistake for the state to consider legalizing it. And again, as far as the source of revenue, I think we can find money elsewhere than trying to find a so-called recreational drug that will pay the bills. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody. We're going to wrap this up with the last three-part question for each of you. We'll take a few minutes to answer that, and then I think the candidates will be available for personal questions after that. So this is your chance to tell us why you're running, why the people out here should vote for you, and what you're going to do to help Lake and Sanders County and Flathead County and make things better for everybody.
Well, if you could ask my wife over here, Susie, why I'm running, she probably couldn't answer either. When I ran for my first term as county commissioner, they're 6-year terms, and I thought 1 term is going to be enough. That'll be 6 years of service, and I can turn around and walk away from the job. Well, it took me about 3 years to find out exactly what county commissioners did. And then it took me about 2 more years to really understand what the issues that we have going on in Lake County. And there are many, many issues that we have to deal with. We can't push them back into the background and say, well, we're going to deal with this in a couple of years, or it's okay if we don't address it right now. We have issues that need to be addressed. We have a loss of tax revenue in this county that's significant, and if we don't address this problem, it will be the demise of the county. We've seen in Browning what happens when you don't have a tax base to support local government. Now, a city can declare bankruptcy, but a county cannot. So we don't have the ability to declare bankruptcy as a county. We have to figure out a way to provide county services. One of the things that the Montana Association of Counties puts out every year is a little spreadsheet that shows the amount of new taxable properties that come on into the county during a fiscal year. Missoula County last year was about 18 million. Flathead County was about 12 million. Sanders County was 4 million. Lake County was just over $600,000. So when you look at the adjoining counties and you see what's going on in those counties, and then you compare that to Lake County, something's not right here. And we have to fix that problem. And as a commissioner, that will be one of the big issues that I will address. The water rights, the rights to the beds of the rivers, I think those issues are still up in the air, and I think we need to pursue taxes on some of these properties, or at least mitigation of the tax loss, because again, if we don't do that, then what's the old saying? I don't know if I want to be the best county commissioner, but I don't want to be the last county commissioner in Lake County. So I guess if I get elected, I'm going to continue to do my best for all the people. I do firmly believe that if we could some way bring CSKT to the table to discuss some of these issues that we have going on and work together and come up with some common ground and some issues that we could agree on and attack cooperatively. The federal government is not a good local problem solver. So we need to address these issues as a county government, a tribal government, with some help from the state and the feds. But at this time, we don't have a relationship with CSKT that allows us to do this. So I will continue to work to try to build a relationship with CSKT. We offer to meet with them on a regular basis. We are rebuffed on a regular basis, and we rarely meet, and it usually comes only after we have spent days. The last meeting that we had took me 71 days to accomplish. We can't meet at Pablo anymore because they don't observe any of the Montana open meeting laws. So until we can convince them that they have to meet somewhere where we can obey Montana open meeting laws and where we can discuss everything that's on the table, then I think we can make progress. So thank you.
She's quietly under her breath says, "What are you going to do for me?" I'm running. I was actually recruited to run. I I thought I had done my duty for one session, and I had tried to diligently run House District 15. And just a little history on that. One year I ran, my opponent spent $15 in the campaign against me, okay? And that $15 was actually a tribal government check to enroll him to be the House candidate. There was no money spent, and the tribal government on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation said, this is who you're going to vote for. And that's how they voted, and they brought them out by buses and stuff like that. So I didn't have a real good sense that I wanted to get back into politics. Rick Jor gives me a call and he says, you can do this. And I go, I know I can do this, but do I want to do this? And here I am, and I am seriously putting in my hat into this ring. I believe that I can help at the legislative level. I can support ag exemptions on property so that the taxes on ag land do not disappear for people. That limits the tax base for other issues. I would prefer to have private enterprise locate on this county and build new bases for the work, for good paying jobs. And the only way we can do that is to limit regulations that the state is imposing on us. So one of the most successful things I can do as a legislator sometimes is looking at something and saying, no, this is not good. That's one of the most important things that I did in that last session was picking out those issues where I said no. That's just as important as saying yes to some bills, but no sometimes is a definite answer. And what can I do for you as individuals? Just defend the rights of property, the rights of the Constitution. And I want to bring back one thing. I want to bring this up about the compact. Did you know that when the bill got changed into Montana Code Annotated, the state, if you have a problem and you go before anybody on this water compact, the state's going to defend the tribe. The state's going to defend the tribe. That's the way it's written. This is the only compact like that. So not only are you going to have an issue with the CME and the other organizations that are going to be created in this water compact, you will have to fight the state who will defend those very things that are unconstitutional.
So the simple answer to the question why you're running, for me, it boils down to I hate lawlessness. When an independent auditor tells you that your criminal justice system has been in a crisis mode for 20 years, it's time for a fresh set of ideas and a new perspective based on education, training, and experience. And that's what I bring to Lake County. That's what I'm offering to you to actually make those changes. When you talk about building bridges with the tribal community, as I mentioned earlier, that can be done through public safety. That's where it needs to begin, because we all have a shared interest in public safety, especially as it relates to felony crimes. The other thing, and I really see my role as sheriff, I don't believe this is a responsibility of the commissioners. It's my responsibility to come up with a plan to get a new jail built. And the reason why I say that is, I need to communicate to the public what the needs are, to find out from you, what kind of crimes do you actually want to see resulting in incarceration? Should a burglary suspect, somebody that breaks into your house, actually be incarcerated? It's my responsibility to create and communicate to the public what the needs are, find out from you what you want to actually see happen, and get the political will and the public interest to actually have a new jail facility built. Because here's what's going to happen if we don't do it. If we don't solve this problem under my leadership, locally, the federal government will step in and do it for us. Just like we've seen before with the court-ordered mill levy resulting from the homicide a few years ago. The federal government will come in through a federal consent decree and fix the problem for us. I don't want that to happen. They'll dictate terms that may not be in the public's best interest. We need to do that. That starts with me. That starts as your sheriff, communicating what the needs are and getting the solutions from you, and actually coming up with a plan to make it happen. Yes, sir.
Would you ever sign a federal consent decree for any reason?
I don't know under what circumstance I'd be in a position where I'd have to make that decision.
Well, some of the other law enforcement officers have signed, or law enforcement agencies or groups have signed consent decrees of one sort or another. And they were intimidated into it. I guess my question is, would you be intimidated into signing something like that?
If a federal judge came in and ordered the community to actually have a jail built, I would comply with that order and see to it that it's built. I want to get it built. I want to get a jail built without having that option being exercised by the feds. Shouldn't have to happen. But if we keep kicking this can down the road, that is ultimately what's going to happen.
But you would not capitulate to a United States Attorney General. You would capitulate only to a judge. You follow my question?
It depends on what the circumstances. I mean, you look at how about an officer that lets you have been in violation of civil rights action through excessive force. An example like that. If following our investigation they sustained the allegations, then I would support that Attorney General's opinion. If it didn't, I would back my officer. Okay?
Very nice.
Other question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You got 3 great candidates up here. And I'll tell you, to have skin in the game, it's never fun to be up here. I will tell you that it gets easier when this is like the 230th time to be able to sit here in front of you. But here in a heartbeat, it was over 13 and a half months ago when I called my wife and we had a family conversation about whether or not to jump in this race. And if you remember what was happening at that time, President Trump was taking a thrashing, an absolute thrashing. You know, by whom? Yeah, by the media. Yeah, the Democrats, they were thrashing him, but so was the Republican Party. A large portion of those progressives in our Republican Party were thrashing him. They were not just getting out of the way, they were taking their shots at him as well. And that was what motivated my family and I to jump in this race with both our feet, just jump in, sink or swim. That's the motivation, to help and really push a president that didn't get a chance to build a cabinet. He still doesn't have his cabinet built, right?
Right.
He does not have an administration put in place because there's a resistance. And when you look around it, there's no more important place that I could see at the time than in the United States Senate. And that starts with our leadership. Doesn't matter what party. The first thing that we have to do in order to get our country going is that we have to repeal and replace Mitch McConnell. He's got to go. He's part of a leadership issue where they've taken, and he was with Reid. He was part of that triumvirate, and now he's got Schumer. And what they've done is they've taken actual power away from our own senators, and they took it away from the chairman of all the committees, and they concentrated it up in about 5 people. And that is unconstitutional, and they have to go. I can't tell Kentucky that they have to get rid of him as senator, but I can tell you as your senator that he's got to go as our leader, okay? So that is what really motivated me to go from there. Because we have to fix the Senate so they go to regular order like the House. The House passed 530 bills and sent them, including a budget last September, and they did nothing, right? And I'm not, how can I not be motivated by a $1.3 trillion omnibus bill that's 2,000 pages, created in the dark of night with the risk of shutting down our government, and was shoved down our throats by the Republican leadership with Schumer saying you got to pass it before you know what's in it. That was absolutely wrong, and it can never happen again.
Yeah.
I was mad at President Trump because he signed it. He should have vetoed it. It was a perfect time for him to veto it. But I hold Mitch McConnell and Schumer and those people more accountable than I do the president, because they gave him that slime that came out of the sewer, right? It's not a swamp, it's a sewer.
Right.
What am I going to do for you? Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm currently your state senator. You know, for most of it, I cover District 6. Janet decided that it was time for me to hold her place warm for a while until she got comfortable again. Then we're going to make her come back and take the state senate. Yeah, we are, Janet. But the fact is it was a great opportunity to learn about Lake County and to understand what's going on with Kerr Dam, the water compact. and such. So I'm the only candidate in this race that is from Western Montana. And I'm going to tell you, there's nothing more important to me than taking care of Western Montana. Your issues are my issues. Do you got it? Your cause is my cause. So we're in the process of making sure we uphold the Constitution, that we bring the Senate back into regular order, and we support our president for the Trump agenda and move forward.
Yeah.
All right? I'm also going to be taking your cause, your agenda, and your issues, and making sure that the federal government doesn't mess up with you, doesn't screw you over. That's really, if I have to put it in, we got to make sure the government doesn't come in here and mess up your lives. All right? And I'm the only candidate from Western Montana that understands your life, and I live your life. Because everything that's going on that we've talked about today, I'm experiencing myself, and my family's experiencing. So it's important to me. And I guess I have a question in the back room.
Yeah, Ian Forte. He body slammed someone.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me to spell it.
No.
Okay.
Hey, I'm the worst fellow in the world. But he body slammed somebody, and then he pled guilty, and it seems he's lost his voice. You aren't going to lose your voice in Washington, are you?
Listen, I actually, did you read I sent out a little email transcription. I'm finding that I'm getting a lot of resistance just getting out the word. But here's the thing. I've been across this country, across the state, 40,000 miles now. 40,000 miles. I've been 1.5 times around the world in the state of Montana. And from all over, one of the most common comments or questions is what you just said. And let me rephrase it. It is, Doc, why is it that we see all the time good candidates come up and they speak a good story? They speak a really good story, and then when they're elected, they go to Washington, and we don't hear that story anymore. In fact, we see actions that are far different than what we heard. So what say you, Doc? Are you going to do it? Well, let me first of all explain to you my theory on this situation, because I experienced it, is that what happens is these candidates, in order to get elected to the federal level, need a lot of money. And you're just not going to get $1 million or $2 million out of average working Montanans. And you know what? They take the easy way out. The easy way is to go to Washington and beg for money. The problem is those high financial donors expect to be on the top of their dance card. They're no longer Montana senators. They belong to somebody else for the first 6 or 7 dances. They just do. All right? That's the trick. So when I first jumped in the race, I said April 11th, I jumped in the race on Tuesday. It was a really good time. I got lots of pictures taken, got some hard questions asked, and it was in the papers. The next morning, on April 12th, I was walking down the hallway in the Senate offices, and the Speaker of the House, Austin Knudsen, pulled me into an office and he said, Al, you can't be running for this race. I said, yeah, right, Austin. He says, no, Al, you've got to go back out there and tell them that you're not running, that you're just exploring or something. I said, Austin, what gives? What are you talking about? He said, I just got off the phone with Washington, D.C. They don't know you, they've never vetted you, and you've never been to charm school. And they say you can't be in this race. And I said, Austin, did you tell them that this seat belongs to Montana and not them? Right? This is our seat, not their seat. So what you're going to see is then I went out there and I talked to them, but I also talked to these other big groups, these big money groups, and I'll tell you what they said. Doc, you look good, you sound good. You know what? If you just sign here, pledge your loyalty to our cause, we play in primaries, and we'll throw $50,000 to $100,000 in your race if you're pledged to our cause. And I said, you know what? You're a free market group. I get some of the greatest messages off your website. If you just talk to me, you would understand you don't need to get any pledge of loyalty. I'm with you on 98, 99% of what you say. They said, Doc, you know, we just want the certainty that you're with us 100% of the time. I said, well, you know what? I'm a doctor. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I can't even promise my kids I'm going to be at their birthday parties. So I'm not signing that. I said, okay, Doc, but you know what? Somebody in your race will. Right? It was right there and then that I decided, as I walked out of there, I just said, you know what? I'm going to do this without their money. I am not going to take money from Washington. I'm not going to pledge my loyalty to somebody else. And so I've been running a David Bratt style race. And if you know Dave Bratt, he's now Representative Dave Bratt. He's from Virginia. He ran against the second most powerful man in Congress, Eric Cantor, the majority leader, and he won with only $200,000, and he still had money in the bank. He didn't run a single commercial, and he beat Eric Cantor. He was outspent 40-1. Why? How did he win? He won on a message. He won because he walked around and looked you all in the eyes in Virginia, your cousins, and he said, I got your back, right? And Eric Cantor was depending on the money to win his race. He didn't run a race. He stood back away, said some vague things about the Constitution and how I'm for you, and he let the commercials and the millions of dollars try to win the race for him, and he lost. Why? Because we are fed up with that. We are absolutely fed up. That's why I'm motivated to be here, and that's why I'm ready to win this. I'm peaking at the right time. I have won that. If you've seen it, if you all helped, thank you. The Montana Mint ran the only poll in Montana. It's a made in Montana poll. They're out of Billings, and they ran a poll, and they have over 21,000 followers, and they sent it out to as many people as they could. I won the poll with 53% of the vote. The other candidates are doing polls. They have lots of money. Because why? Because they're taking it from Washington. And they're running polls on a monthly basis, and they're not bragging about their poll. They're not. Matt Rosendale has one poll that he's talking about that says he has 40% support. No, if you read it, Club for Growth, oh, by the way, they put over $100,000 into his campaign. So they're a little biased on who wins this poll. The poll was not about who's going to win the race. It was about, do you know his name? And they only call 500 people that are supposedly Republicans in Montana. But the other polls, who you're supporting to win, nobody's talking about their polls. Nobody. And I'm only worried about one poll. That's the vote on June 5th. And that's why I'm hoping for your vote. And then finally, here's the big deal on this situation. If you want a senator that belongs to Steve Bannon, or to Mitch McConnell, or to the Washington, or not even the Washington, how about the state, Montana's Trial Lawyers Association? All right? Or just the trial lawyers. If you want to follow the money, fec.com or .org, you can follow the money where my money came from and all the contenders. I've raised $300,000. $100,000 of it is my own. It's my family's retirement plan. All right? 95% of all my money, well, 98% of it is individual contributions. 95% of it comes from Montanans. The average donation is $174. You know, and I love it that way because then I owe Montana. Not one person, I owe you. I dance with you. So I look forward for your support, and I don't want to take you more, but I love that question.
You owe me coffee for that.